Right, this is a short video to explain how to see the growth of housing numbers from the council tax base statistics released by the government every November. The statistics are actually based on October data, and when you pull up the spreadsheet, you'll see several tabs. One should be CTB, which is council tax base, and there should be an adjuster which actually lets you change from the whole England figures to look at individual areas or cities. And if you change it to Coventry um, on the little city selector tab, you can see how many chargeable council tax dwellings there were in October 2011. Um, Looking down these lists, there's the total number of dwellings on the valuation list, so that's properties that can be taxed theoretically. And this is useful because when houses are built or flats are built, they get put on the valuation list when they're actually signed off as being complete. So we can see what the total number of dwellings was in Coventry in 2011. And not all council dwellings actually are taxable. So we also see the number of chargeable dwellings, which back in 2011 was 128,000. There's loads of data in these spreadsheets. There's a supplementary page alongside this page of all the data, which gives you some of the exemptions. And so if you go to the top of that and make sure it's on Coventry, you see there's vacant properties of various types. You see ones for clergy, deceased persons. The most interesting for us is probably the two for student accommodation. There's Class M and Class N. Uh, M is the halls of residence predominantly, and N are student houses. So back in 2011, we had 2,333 houses not paying council tax in the October for being a student household. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a bit of a breakdown of all the student accommodation. And also it gives you by May as well, because obviously as the academic year rolls round, we have more houses registered as student houses in May than we do in October. Very useful, and bizarrely there are some band H, which obviously must be really massive houses, holding entirely students. If I switch windows now to the 2020 data, you'll see in 2020 there's now far more tabs. They've made the spreadsheet a bit more complicated, but the basic principles are the same. You need to select at the top your city, which obviously in your case is Coventry, and you'll see it there. We've got considerably more houses now in Coventry on the valuation list, considerably more that don't pay council tax, and still plenty more, now 137,777 that are chargeable. Some of the chargeable houses will be empty, so you can go down the list and look at the current charging arrangements for them all. And like the 2011 thing, we've got a supplementary form that breaks down all the different exemptions. We've got a lot more dwellings empty due to deceased persons, and we've got a considerable rise in student accommodation. So the Class M and N is now gone up considerably, 6,881 dwellings purely occupied by students. And if you go down the bottom now, there's a bit more breakdown of that, and you can see it goes up to almost 9,000 by the May each year. So it's a very useful spreadsheet. And what I've done on the front page is I've actually pasted in the figures for 2011 next to the figures for 2020 and subtracted them. So I found out the total chargeable dwellings has now gone up by 13,000. The exempt list has gone up by 3,500. Though actually there's more than that on the students because some of the other exemptions have gone down. And the number of chargeable dwellings, which is more or less normal family homes, has gone up by 9,534. I've also in this last column divided by 9 to see the changes over the 9 years per year, and we've gained 1,448 properties per year, but we've only added 1,059 to the chargeable dwellings each year. And I say the big difference in here is the students. Um, we're getting more and more non-chargeable dwellings in Coventry. And obviously, a lot of these dwellings hold many, many students. So, in terms of our housing alleged crisis in Coventry, we really need to understand these stats and how much of the housing growth has been students, which is about 4,000, as opposed to 9,500 for non-student dwellings, but also understand how many houses, how many occupy each of these houses. It's also interesting how we've gained so many more empty properties in Coventry over the 9 years.